All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Yoga Philosophy Study Group coming to you from the Yoga Center of Chico. I'm Lauren Carley, and with me is Tom Hess. In this series, we're studying the Bhagavad Gita, and we're using this book, but you can use any version or translation of the Gita that you like. And we study the Gita as it relates to your life in the here and now, in addition to what it says from way back in when it was first written. Today we're studying chapter 13. Now, this author translated 16, thank you. I'm thinking 16 and saying 13. This author translates 16 as two paths. Another translation of this chapter is the divine path and the demonic path, which is a little bit more descriptive, I'll say. Each session is recorded and can be found on the YCC's YouTube channel. And each session is also done live. We hold it live at the YCC, but we open up a Zoom channel for those that want to participate live. Anybody can join this yoga discussion group. The live sessions at the YCC are the fourth Thursday of every month, and they start at 5:30. If you're going to be joining us on Zoom, please try to get on Zoom about 10 minutes early to work out any issues. You can find us on the YCC website where you can get our contact information to be added to our mailing list. We do have a couple of handouts. I'll be back after Tom's presentation on chapter 16 on how to relate this chapter to your everyday life. Tom?
Thank you, Lauren. Well, like Lauren says, the name of this chapter is Two Paths. And it really is what, the second description she talked about, the divine path and the demonic path. I think what we really have to look at here in this chapter and the previous chapter is Krishna has been going almost every chapter, as I can recall, at least a number of them. He has been going over the attributes of a wise spiritual seeker. And so he continues to say, well, this person on the path, this spiritual practitioner, is compassionate, has goodwill to all, takes care of the people around him, he or them. Vigor, he's got patience, he's got will, he's got purity, he avoids malice and pride. So the way that we can apply these principles from the Bhagavad Gita into our daily lives is emulating the person that Krishna is describing as the wise one or the spiritual seeker, as opposed to what we will talk about in just a second, the demonic path, that alternate path. So this, one of the other things about this chapter is it's not so much a dialogue in that it's a simple lecture. Arjuna has no words in this chapter. Krishna is just all talking to Arjuna and describing these two paths or ways of conducting oneself in the world. So there's one of the really funny things that I saw, that I noticed in here, Krishna assures Arjuna, don't worry about it. You're one of the good ones. You're one of the divine ones. So Krishna is just telling us this so we can look at our lives, our behavior, and others' lives and their behaviors and say, this kind of behavior falls into the demonic category. This kind of behavior falls in the divine category. So we've gone over throughout the previous 15 chapters the various practices, the karma yoga, jnana yoga, raja yoga, bhakti yoga, these various practices that one can partake of to move down this path. Krishna has already described what a wise person does in the world and what an unwise person does in the world. So this is just a little bit more of an elaboration of these two choices we really do have in our life. It's our choice. We can follow this demonic path because there are some really attractive elements of it. You feel good. I mean, one of the things about this path is the goal is sexual union, that release of the sex, the orgasm. And that they sort of signify that this is the ultimate experience in life. But as we all know, because we've studied the Gita, that isn't it. Any physical experience that we have in our physical bodies is less important than that understanding of the real self that lives within us. So anything that we might feel in life as a pleasure or a pain even needs to be detached from so that we can start to see the true self underneath. But anyway, we have these people in life that are what Krishna would clearly describe as demonic. And so the inhumane, and he calls it inhumane or inhuman qualities, conceit, anger, cruelty, ignorance. And when we see people in the world acting like this, cruel, conceited, angry all the time, we wouldn't want to pass judgment on that person because we really don't know what else is going on in that life. But it gives us an indication of some of the things that we need to overcome individually and, help others overcome as well. These ideas of conceit, anger. The demonic people do things they should avoid and avoid the things they should do. Why? Why would one want to avoid doing what they should do? Well, number one, it's harder, initially anyway. For me to sit down and read a book rather than go to a bar and have a beer it's an act of discipline. And I have to say, all right, this is more important than me than that. So, and then the things that are to be avoided, Lauren talked about this in that model that she used with the ice cream thing and the one of our previous talks about we have a choice at some point along our decision-making process to say, no, I don't want to go this way. I want to go that way. And Krishna is saying, hey, those two areas are important because one is a divine path, one is a demonic path. And we as spiritual seekers always want to make the divine choice. But through whatever reason, sometimes we might make a not so wise choice, which is just called life. We all do it. The demonic people have no sense of uprightness, purity, or truth. The truth to them means nothing. They can shade it or do whatever they want to. They don't really have a higher power or a God from these demonic people, because if they had this idea that there's a supreme being or a person above us looking at what we'd be doing, they would be less likely to do those harmful things. And this was an interesting thing that I mentioned a second ago too. The demonic viewpoint of the world is based on sex, that the culmination of the orgasm is the ultimate experience in life. And as I just stated a little bit, that's a misunderstanding of spiritual practice. It's putting the body above the spirit. And we need to see that any of these pleasurable or even unpleasurable experiences are not the point, is not the goal. It's something to be detached from so we can look deeper into our own spirit and how we can develop and work with that. And there's lots of examples in the Gita about practices that we can do. The gratification of lust is the highest goal of life for this demonic person. They cause suffering and destruction. Can you imagine if somebody with a little bit of power spent their whole life just wasting it away and having sex with other people? It would just destroy so many other people. It would go of suffering, destruction. It would cause uncountable emotional harm to many people. They hoard money to satisfy their cravings. I can't get enough. I want to win. It's mine, mine, mine. It's just a way of thinking. It's delusion. They're ignorant of this simple fact that the more important way to live one's life is through the life of spirit rather than satisfaction of desires. And until one sees that deeper truth, one will continue to have ignorance as one goes through life. This is the big message on both the sutras and the Gita. Ignorance is thinking that we are individual ego-based people. Wisdom is seeing that we're all connected on a deeper level. It's a simple idea, difficult to grasp, difficult to understand, years of study required, but that's the basic principle. The person with demonic has pride. And then what happens with this person at death? Let's say that I lead a demonic life and I die. Okay, in the reincarnation model, then Krishna, who is the ultimate sayer of all these reincarnations, would put that demonic person back in with a womb that is demonic as well. Now, demonic might sound a little bit harsh, and I think it does, but you get reborn into. Okay, this is my understanding of the way it works. One lives their life and one either practices spiritual pursuits or not. If you do not practice spiritual pursuits, like the demonic person, you will be subject to rebirth in the similar category or level of existence that you left from. If you work on the spiritual path, if you continue to work towards this element of divine that Krishna describes, you're raising yourself up the spiritual ladder so that when you die, then you will be reincarnated into a family or in situation of a higher spiritual pursuit. So all of the work that we do in this life, practice, study, detachment, are all things that are going to help us in the next life. So if this demonic person does bad things, they're going to go down and be reborn. And sadly enough, it's a bit of a cycle and unless you can break that cycle, start living your life with the spirit, then without it, you're going to be subject to that reincarnation cycle. But Krishna identifies 3 qualities of the demonic personality that are the worst: lust, greed, and anger. And as I was, putting together this talk and thinking about this the last couple of days, I was starting to look at myself and what comes up in my mind. And I could pretty much, other than all the good thoughts, some of the good thoughts anyway, there was a continual invasion of my consciousness with these 3 qualities. And I could pretty much nail it down to the 3 qualities: lust, anger, and greed. So when I saw these things coming at me, this idea of lust, I said, Tom, stop that. That's just your ego thinking things are different than it is. And when I started to think like that, I was able to sort of lose those thoughts. Same with greed, money, same with anger. I'm much better with anger now that I recognize that this is something to really be avoided. And it was something that I have had to deal with in my life that I'm working on, and that it helps me work on these elements of life by Krishna pointing out to me, hey, if you want to lead a divine life, you shy away from those elements, but recognize them within yourself: lust, anger, and greed. They're very prominent. And of course, the demonic person is going to disregard the scriptures, because the scriptures, like the Bhagavad Gita, like all of the texts that we study in the yoga curriculum, they are going to point you towards proper behavior, proper practice, proper detachment. They are not going to steer you away towards demonic activities. So this thing we're doing right now, studying the Gita, is the thing that will shy us towards the divine and away from the demonic. And the demonic person isn't going to be doing it. They're going to be ignoring it. I can't tell you how many people have said, why do you read that old stuff, Tom? That must have been written thousands of years ago. What relevance does it have today? Well, this is the relevance it has today. These people, these demonic people, they're missing the goal of life. They're being attracted to the flashy signs and the big attachments and the big videos and all that, and thinking that's real. Not really. That's just a manifestation of Maya, the illusion that's around us all the time, of things that are there for our attraction but have no substance. So if there's anything that we want to do is not miss the goal. And the goal is understanding, spiritual understanding that the true self lives within and that everything else is to be detached from. And our path is studying current scriptures, because I read stuff also that's been published these last few years. Prashant Iyengar is a perfect example. He's producing works every day, well, often. And, you know, that would be considered, to me, one of the important texts of all of the yoga pantheon. So it doesn't always ancient texts. It's texts that tell the truth. These texts, these long-established texts and study elements that tell the truth and don't have illusion. So study the scriptures and understand. But that's just the tip. You have to study the scriptures, you have to understand them, then you have to act. Either act into meditation, act into asana, act into the 8 limbs of yoga, act in such a way that Krishna has been describing for us to act all of these 16 chapters. Well, there it is. Turn towards the divine, move away from the demonic. That's what Krishna is telling Arjuna. And I contend that you people out there that are watching this video are in the divine category right now. So you're starting with a leg up. So, namaste. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. That was great. I love that. It leads right into the practice I have for everybody. In between the demons and the saints, and we know we can all probably think of somebody in our life that's like a demon or a demonic type person that fits the description, and people that lean towards sainthood. I will say these are strong words in our English language, but there's no mistaking what Krishna's talking about here, and I think that's why the strong words were chosen. But in between those two is where most of us live our lives. And the practice for today is to focus on 16:7, verse 16:7, which Tom described. I can't even say it. The people that headed towards down the demonic path avoid things they should do and do things they should avoid. That's where I'm focused on our practice today. Now, in our everyday life, this might look something like when you walk out of a room, do you avoid turning the lights off, or do you make the choice to flip the light switch off and save some energy? It comes down to these little choices on small things in our everyday life, and it is a practice. And the more we practice it, the more we head in the right direction. Believe it or not, it's kind of like your little tiny come to Jesus meeting every time you turn around every day. Let's say you drop a few crumbs on the floor. Do you kick them under the table hoping nobody sees them, or do you clean them up? You're walking down the hallway with your arm load full of dirty laundry and you drop a sock. Do you kick it under the bed thinking, or leave it there and say, I'll come back and get that later sometime? Or do you stop and pick it up? It's these little tiny decisions that are between the saints and the demonic people. That's where we live our everyday life. And I suggest that between now and let's say next month, try to catch yourself. Flip that light switch off. Close that door. Close the cabinet when you're done with it. Put your things away. Empty your dishwasher. Whatever it is in your life, that's the tiny things. See if you can't start your practice right there in the moment at that point. Well, Tom, any last words?
No, that about says it, Lauren. Great practice. Let's all see if we can practice it.
All right. Well, with that, I guess we'll turn the recording off.
Thank you.